going to come up here. Moore, Carl Swan, and Lou Ward.
What worries me, however, is the fact that because of President Carter's significant reductions in the projected military strength that my administration had programmed for the last 4 years, that such actions by President Carter will be drawing our forces very thin in the Middle East as well as elsewhere.
It's estimated that every year 100,000 children of divorced parents are stolen by the non-custodial spouse and taken to other states where they file custody proceedings attempting to obtain legal custody of those children. Well, tomorrow, Oklahoma joins 46 other states in this country by adopting and implementing the Uniform Child Custody Jurisdiction Act. This is aimed at eliminating that kind of activity. Following tomorrow, Oklahoma courts generally will recognize custody orders that are entered in other states and even in other nations. They'll refuse to hear a case where a child has been stolen from another state. They'll also refuse to hear cases where there is presently pending another case in another state. And they'll refuse to hear cases where another state has more contacts with that child's past, such as witnesses being present there. The new act in Oklahoma also makes child stealing finally a criminal felony. And hopefully, with the majority of states now adopting this act in the United States, it will eliminate the purpose and potential success of child stealing. For Action 4, this is Ray Vaughn with Legal Briefs.
Ward 5 is probably the largest ward in Oklahoma City and area, and our needs vary. We have a heavily populated area through this portion of the city. The extreme southeast portion of Oklahoma City's problems are much different than the heavily populated areas, and I'm going to seek better fire protection, better police protection. I think these are the two main issues that the people of Oklahoma City are concerned with.
John Clark appeared in court for the third time today for a hearing to determine if he should stand trial for second-degree murder. But once again, the hearing has been delayed. Clark is accused of the beating death of Clyde Edwards during Edwards' arrest last March. Since then, the victim's family has conducted its own investigation. The repeated delays are over whether the results of that investigation should be turned over to the defense. The families opposed, so the case went to the Court of Criminal Appeals. It was then referred to the Supreme Court, which yesterday sent it back down to the Court of Appeals. This morning, witnesses were told they'd have to come back later this month because the hearing can't continue until the matter is resolved. Clark's attorney says he should have access to the information.
The reason is because this is information which was given by the family, shown to the FBI, shown to the our local district attorney's office and its representatives, shown to other law enforcement agencies. Therefore, there's no privileged communication involved at all.
Thomas says he's entitled to the information compiled by the Edwards family, not because it could hurt his client, but because it might help him. He says the material is crucial to Clark's defense, which is why Thomas believes the family is trying so hard to keep it from him. Bruce Creeksies, Action 4.
Well, here again, as I said, the programs we want to look at are without a return to that New Deal type of thing, in which government was the manager of the farms. We are not going to pull the rug out from under on programs that have proven beneficial and proven their success.
The University of Oklahoma was the site of the 4th District Congressional debate tonight. It was Democrat Dave McCurdy squaring off against GOP candidate Howard Rutledge in a debate that showed just where each stood on major issues in Oklahoma and the United States. Supporters of the two men were asked not to show approval or disapproval until the debate was over. McCurdy told the crowd that because he's a Democrat, he'll have more power and be able to represent the district better.
I'm going to be able to be on a committee that has a Democratic chairman. I'm going to be a voice in Congress that can work effectively through the system and through the process. I'm not going to be on the outside shouting, trying to get in on the inside. I'm going to be able to work within the system. I think that's extremely important.
Rutledge, on the other hand, says those Democrats in power now don't represent Oklahoma's best interest.
I don't care if I'm the outside, inside, or upside down. I'm going to represent people in Oklahoma. That leadership that exists in the Congress, and yes, it's true, on every one of those committees, there is leadership that does not represent the Oklahoman.
Debates seem to be a popular item this election year. Whether or not tonight's debate helped or hurt either candidate is a question that really can't be answered until November. Ed Stewart, Action 4.
Well, that's the wrongest reason of all. I sure hope everybody in the room.
This is where Doc Collins would have found his drugstore in the Skirvin lobby. But that was his first job here, and that was 35 years ago. Doc says he's gone through a lot of changes with the hotel, its battle through the Depression, and its fight against age. Doc, I know some of the things in the hotel are original. Aren't these gorgoyles original?
Those are original, and if you'll note, there's several different types of faces and positions. Right about where the little belly button is, you'll see copper tubing coming out of there, and originally they had gas lights and later on converted to electricity. To me, most anything that happens here is exciting because it's relative to somebody's happiness, whether it be a wedding or whether it be a political event or whether it be a weekend for 50th anniversary.
Doc isn't the only one who appreciates the Skirvin's good old days. The new owners have spent a lot of money restoring the inside, and today it was declared a National Historic Landmark. You can almost hear the big band sound that would have filled this room 40 years ago. There also would have been romantic dining and dancing, but now the room is used for meetings and cocktail parties. But as Doc told me, that's just another sign of the changing times. Jane Boone, Action 4.
Oklahoma's first game against Kentucky may also have been the last one for Mike Reilly. Reilly was suspended recently by head coach Barry Switzer after allegedly being involved in a fight. He won't play again this year unless a federal judge decides to intervene. Reilly is asking for a temporary restraining order until he receives a hearing from the school. His court appearance today dealt with whether his rights were violated when he was taken off the team. In court, Reilly said he would lose the opportunity to play professional football if he weren't reinstated this year. And his attorney argued that Reilly has a constitutional right to pursue a career. But lawyers for OU countered that if a coach doesn't have the right to make those decisions, college athletics will be in serious trouble. Coach Switzer also testified. He said he based his decision on the fact Reilly was involved in several previous incidents, and the latest was the last straw. He admittedly didn't like deciding the matter in court.
Head football coach of any program around the country should be able to exercise his own discipline within his squad. I haven't removed him from scholarship. I'm still paying his way to school. I determine who plays and not plays on my football team.
Reilly left the courthouse with no comment. A decision's expected by next week. But even if he's reinstated in time for the Texas game, his troubles aren't over. He also faces criminal charges, and the outcome of those will determine whether he plays next year. Bruce Creeksey, Action 4.
By afternoon, the remains still burned in downtown Okemah. Firemen had worked nearly 6 hours to put the flames out, but the building still had enough material inside to keep the fire going. What used to be thriving businesses were now trying to recover in other parts of the city. The fire unit spent the afternoon putting out small flames in the back of a hardware. They say the fire started in an upstairs apartment next door, and by the time it spread to the other buildings, it was too late to save anything inside. Firemen say the damage will be over several $100,000. The hardware store had been there 50 years. All that Lawrence Powers had to show for his television shop were only 20 years of business records. He lost some valuable musical instruments and a few color TVs.
I don't have any insurance, so it's a little rough.
What are you going to do now?
I'll keep going. I've got my other building here, and I've got a pretty good rental income from it, and we'll carry on.
Rick DeReyes, Action 4, Okemah.
Carry on. I took them up to the front. Went back and got some more. I told him, I said, I didn't think you vote for anybody as far as you already. I don't think you vote for anybody as far as drafting of these young ladies over here.
Moral majority of the fundamentalist movement may account for some of Jimmy Carter's poll problems. In Oklahoma, about 2,400 churches are on the organization's rolls, and the state chairman is Pastor Jim Vineyard.
Our purpose is threefold: voter registration, voter education, and voter participation. We believe that people in our churches have not in the past exercised their responsibilities politically. Therefore, we've taken this position of registering them to vote, educating them on the issues, and then trying to get them out on election day to vote.
Vineyard says the organization does not support any individual candidate, but the moral majority's publications show a definite preference for the Republican ticket. President Carter is criticized throughout one paper for his support of the Equal Rights Amendment, his stance on abortion, gay rights, and defense. Vineyard's church emphasizes God and country. The moral majority believes God is a conservative. The only way to find out if the country agrees with them is to count the votes in November. Ted Brown, Action 4.
Dedicated to the children of the land. Okay, Mark Walker, that was the preacher, huh?
Yeah, that was the one. Now on this side is a little rock up there that was brought.
Dedicated to the children of the land. Okay, Mark Walker, that was the preacher, huh?
Yeah, that was the one. Now on this side is a little rock up there that was brought.
I made a promise to the people that as long as I'm secretary, that there would not be a taking down of the statue over there, and that the use that's been going on for 45 years would in fact continue. But there are some lawyers in the world that have succeeded in taking prayer out of the classroom, but they're not going to take the statue out of the refuge. As I think your governor stated so eloquently, that there is the need to separate church and state, but you cannot and should not separate the principles on which this country was founded.
Swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution and the laws of the state of Oklahoma,
and the Constitution and the fully discharge
according to the best of
I swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution.
in those capacities. Thank you.
Would you like to sign here?
I think we can recognize the importance of the
I, Jim D. Scott,
I, Jim D. Scott, that I will support the Constitution of Oklahoma City.
back to you.
Just last week, the Clinical Reduction Center was treating dozens of women in Enid trying to lose weight. But sometime during the weekend, the owners cleaned house and closed down shop. There was a note on the window reading an explanation would be in the mail. But clinic members are still out of their money.
In four other towns they had.
Susan Busby paid $160 only 2 weeks ago for 6 weeks' worth of reduction sessions at a clinic that no longer exists.
All we have is citizens that have been taken in by these people and that have left with anywhere from, these women have left with like $200 to $500 of our money and per person, and all we can do is file a civil suit in bankruptcy court against them.
Enid police are conducting an investigation into the clinic's operation for possible fraud, but admit that will be hard to prove if owners file bankruptcy.
To constitute a fraud, if they were to take money and possibly not put it back in the business, but to put it into their own use fraudulently, we may have a fraud. But at this point, it appears that they are taking money into the business and putting it back into the business itself. So that's where we're having a hard time.
So Mrs. Busby's and others who invested in the Clinical Reducing Center really don't have anything to show for their investment here, except the contract. It's doubtful they'll ever get their money back, and it's also doubtful they'll ever invest in another Clinical Reducing Center. In Enid, Oklahoma, Ed Stewart, Action 4.
Your values, as well as the others floating around the world, the better some sort of way of delaying being gratified right off. They just give themselves all kinds of miserable, stressful.
We have three gentlemen representing, especially appointed for the purpose of
school, church work, but it just doesn't work that way, does it? The values and moral standards with the evolving of the now generation, all of these things.
This is the Barkouris Foundation. It first made the headlines when its founder, George Barkouris, came under a federal grand jury investigation. Then in June, Jack Anthony, a vice president of the foundation, was convicted of wiretapping Richard Sternloff, a psychologist in competition with Barkouris. Now the U.S. Attorney Larry Patton and the FBI are being charged with misconduct by an employee of the foundation. The massive petition filed by Kay Delaporte includes transcripts of taped recorded conversations. In the petition, Delaporte says her ex-husband, Chris, now with the Department of Interior, was instrumental in getting Larry Patton appointed. She also says Chris is using his power to discredit the foundation. One example, a conversation between her brother, Tom McGehee, and her ex-husband concerning Jack Anthony's appeal. Chris Delaporte. Well, we won't worry about the appellate court. We've got our judge out there, you know, Stephanie Seymour of Tulsa. Proud to say on the 10th Circuit, put there by the man you're talking to. Then the conversation goes on. Tom McGehee asked, so she would be hearing it then? Uh-huh. It's better than Soap, isn't it? Or Dallas, or whatever those programs are. Who could have ever thought this one up?
Authorized by law to make a determination if they are expected to, as a...
No, sir, I was not a registered elector. Serving as the vice chairman of the Libertarian Party of Oklahoma.
Do you know after this year?
I was pleased with the announcement. It wasn't totally unexpected because the law was unconstitutional, was wrong. But the timing of it was a bit annoying and dismaying because now there's not much time left for a serious campaign. We're going to continue to try and run our campaign in the remaining time that we have, the 3 weeks. And we're going to center our campaign around whether people believe in free choice or not.
The city council at Choctaw made a lot of residents there see red last night. The council voted to keep a proposed 78% increase in the city's water rates. The council says that decision is final, but many Choctaw citizens are fighting mad.
To be honest, it's going to take the 4 members on that council to get off their duff and get things going right.
Roxanne Reynolds and Patty Graciano were spearheading the drive to unseat Mayor Caswell Carter and the 3 councilmen who voted for the water rate increase. It's a tough rate hike want to see the city charter amended to allow recalls. But ironically, that measure must be passed by the mayor and council members they want out of office. From Choctaw, Mark O'Neill, Action 4.
Oklahoma law provides that security deposits must be held in separate escrow accounts by landlords, and those escrow accounts must be in federally insured institutions. Upon the termination of that tenancy or the lease, then that money is available to apply on any unpaid rents that the tenant hasn't paid or on any damages the tenant has done to the apartment. If the funds are to be applied in that manner by the landlord must supply the tenant with a written itemized account of how his money is to be spent. and any balance on that security deposit must be transferred to the tenant within 30 days of three things: termination of the tenancy, the delivery of the apartment back to the landlord, and a written demand from the tenant. If that demand is not made in writing by the tenant within 6 months following the termination of the lease, then the money automatically becomes the landlord's. And unless the rental agreement specifically provides, a tenant may not apply his security deposit on the last month's rent. So to get that security deposit back, be sure and make a written demand to the landlord for it. For Action 4, this is Ray Vaughn with Legal Briefs.
The real victim, or the real culprit who is causing the inflation of which you're the victim is government. Government has to reduce its
Republican 5th Congressional candidate Mickey Edwards talked about what seemed to be the main focus of tonight's open forum. It was a question and answer period, with the public deciding the questions. But for the 4th Congressional District race, it was sounding more like a debate instead.
We have a great and beautiful country, ladies and gentlemen, and it's in jeopardy. Our country is in trouble as a result of 25 years of the leadership that now exists in the Congress. And the only way we're going to get a change to that leadership is to change the Congress, the composition of the Congress.
Opponent David McCurdy then took his turn by charging Rutledge hasn't completely done his homework.
My opponent enjoys getting on the attack on many issues, and many times hasn't quite checked out the record or knows the facts as to my background and what I represent and my values.
A noticeable absentee was Democratic U.S. Senate candidate Andy Coates, but Republican challenger Don Nichols was on hand. Others seeking the Senate seat were Libertarian Robert Murphy and Independent Paul Trent. Libertarian James Rushing is after the congressional seat now held by Edwards. Democrat David Hood is also bidding for the job. As one might expect, everyone felt he came away a winner. Ed Stewart, Action 4.
Dozens of chartered buses will head south from Oklahoma City this weekend, all on their way to the Cotton Bowl. Now, if those buses were to stop at the Dallas terminal, union drivers would have to honor any strikers' picket. That shouldn't be a problem, though.
We don't expect any trouble there. See, our buses will go directly to the stadium, the Cotton Bowl, and as far as I know, the strike won't interfere with that operation at all.
Because of that direct route to the fairgrounds and the Cotton Bowl, OU fans should have no trouble getting to the game. Most fans aren't too worried about a bus strike anyway. Loading up and leaving town is far more important for the fans. After all, the OU Texas weekend is for good times in football, not for strikes and contract talks. OU fans care only that the bus makes it to Dallas and that the Sooners don't fumble. Larry Ottis, Action 4.